A Shalom Akim, Shalom, Shalom, all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone for teaching us his truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Aquath that listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will as always an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about daughters and and men of understanding. And what really inspired this lesson was, to long story short, was the situation that happened in regards to, Alazar and essentially his wife, right? And I kind of wanted to just go from the perspective as, me not being a father, but at the same time, okay, if you were a father, because we're pretty much fathers in the spirit, right? As a father, you would want to give your daughter to a man of understanding. You wouldn't want to give her to, basically anybody, because, and I think that's probably one of the things within our culture, you know, that is strongly missing is number one, fathers, number one, that's, and number two, having, men of understanding. And our culture is essentially being raised by essentially, the mother, right? And the mother that has no head, right? Like the scriptures talk about, as Paul outlines, the head of every man is Hamashiach Yahushai, and every head of every woman is the man, right? So there is an order to things, especially, going into things how a household should run. But within our culture, the lack of a father figure is missing. It's not there, right? So because that one pillar of understanding isn't there to be able to, properly guide the household, what happens is there is a broken down of the family. And this is done very, very strategically by Esau, right? He has taken the fathers, he has essentially, like when the scriptures talk about binding the strong man, he's done that, and has left our households without any fathers, right? So I'm kind of wanted to go from the perspective of from there, and how that affects the woman to become a wife, right? Because with the Alazar situation, we see that, he is not a man of understanding, right? He's not a man of, spiritual substance. He's destitute, in the spirit. He's bankrupt in the spirit, right? And essentially what has happened now, he's been an example of a man of essentially misunderstanding, because now you're giving your wife instructions to bring damnation upon herself, right? So let me start off with that precept, and Lord's will is always this lesson is edifying, right? So I want to go to Sirach, the 7th chapter. As a matter of fact, I'll read it in the KJV first, because that's pretty much what inspired, the title partly inspired this lesson, right? This is Sirach 7 verse. I'll start at verse 23, and it says, "Hast thou children? Instruct them, and bow down their neck from their youth," right? Because there's an importance of your children being instructed, especially in the ways of our culture, and that is what missing. That's why we have a bunch of ungodly children, running around. That they're essentially a bunch of young degenerate plants of a strange vine, because they don't have an operation of how the Lord operates. They don't have the mind of the Lord, right? They don't have a healthy fear of the Lord. So what do? They disrespect parents, elders, or even the prophets too, because truly, when you think about it, the prophets are also likened unto, parents also, fathers, right? Verse 24, here's the point. Um, Actually, verse 25 is the point, but I want to read this. This is verse 24, and it says, "Hast thou daughters? Have a good care of their body, and show not thyself cheerful toward them." It says, "Marry thy daughter, so that shall thou be performed in a weighty matter, but give her to a man of understanding." Right? So that's the point here. And we've seen that, well, we've seen the contrast of that with the Alazar situation, because the Alazar situation now, you're leading your wife to, commit adultery, right? You're leading damnation upon herself. So, a woman, well, from what I've observed, with my little experience, um, women receive instructions. um, they can receive instructions. They can receive righteous instructions, or they can also receive wicked instructions. They're basically conduits to receive instructions. I think of them not in a very how do I put it like this? The best way I can describe it is, and the way I can picture it sometimes, they're kind of like they have to be programmed. They have to be like, they're kind of like robots that you kind of have to like program, right? You have to kind of download the proper information into their minds, so they know how to operate, when they're with when they get to a certain age, and they're given off to a husband, right? They know how to be, a helpmeet. But we see in this society, the contrast occurs, where the information that is downloaded into their minds is the information of the serpent, going back to the garden. They're not trained to be, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not trained to, they're not programmed to be a helpmate. They're programmed to be a harlot. That's the wrong age. You know what I'm saying? So it just shows you that they can receive instruction on one side, in a wicked sense, but they can also receive instructions on a righteous sense. And what we've seen from this Alazar situation is the fact that, you know, um, women can receive instructions from the wicked sense also, right? So that's why, having a man of understanding, giving your man, sorry, like if you're a father, for example, giving your daughter to a man of understanding is very, very crucial. And that is one of the things that is strongly missing within our nation when you think about it, because without the strong man, without the father being there, this is a detrimental effect on not only sons, but also the daughters also, because she doesn't have an example of how a man is supposed to operate, right? So that responsibility and that vetting process doesn't exist. So when you have a father who is a man of understanding present in her life, they're able to vet off bad apples, like Alazar, for example. They're able to vet off, the Pookies and the Ray Rays. So you don't just give your daughter to anybody. You give her to somebody who has some substance. First and foremost, spiritual substance. A man who actually is of in that who actually has a healthy fear of the Lord. That's first and foremost, because that's kind of like a crown of wisdom upon him. As a matter of fact, let me get that. One second. Okay, this is Sirach chapter 1 verse 18, and it says, "The fear of the Lord is a crown of wisdom, making peace and perfect health to flourish, both which are gifts of the Most High. And it enlargeth their rejoicing that love him," right? So it shows in his character that the way he's going to conduct himself. And a lot of these guys, I was just using Alazar as an example because this happened recently, but it also shows that a lot of these men in our nation, they're not men of understanding, right? So there are just a bunch of Pookies and Ray Rays. They have the zeal, they want to get with women, which is not a bad thing, but they don't have, a decent amount of understanding. So what happens is when they get a woman, they lead her down a path of essential destruction, so to speak. right? And like for example, if you Google this one example, um, I don't know what she is. Her name is Caesarean Rock, and there was a guy she was with. These are two celebrities. The woman was named Caesarean Rock, and then the woman, sorry, the man is named Blueface. I think he's a rapper. And now, if you look up the image of the woman online, you see how she looks, um, you know, prior to her meeting the rapper, and then how she looked after meeting the rapper. And you would see there is a very vast difference. So when you look it up, you see, in one sense, before she met him, she was, I think she was into sports. She looked very, very healthy. And then after the fact, you see that she was a woman. She had a bunch of like tattoos on her face, tooth missing, very, very ratchet behavior. So she's vibing off the vibration of the man that she's with, right? So you saw her essentially decline, right? So let me just read that in at last precept in the KJV, and this is sorry, in the GNT, excuse me. It says Sirach 7 verse 25, and it says, when you give your daughter in marriage, you have finished a great task, but give her to a sensible man, right? So like I said earlier, it shows that, a dude like Alazar isn't a sensible man, right? So back to, from the standpoint as like, okay, from the perspective of the father, you don't want to give her to anybody like that, because a guy like that is going to bring damnation onto her welfare. You want to make sure that she has, that she's properly being instructed in the ways of Yahweh Bashem Shai, of course, right? I mean, that's first and foremost, and actually has, physical substance, so to speak, right? They're not just somebody, Johnny from down the block, and Johnny has trouble keeping a job and all that kind of stuff. Johnny's gonna pimp her out and all that kind of stuff. That's another thing also, right? A lot of dudes, a lot of our men don't have that understanding, because a lot of the dudes, do those kinds of things. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can find that in the law somewhere. Just bear with me. I think it's 29. This is Leviticus chapter 19, verse 29, and it says, do not prostitute thy daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall into whoredom and the land become full of wickedness, right? So that's not something we're supposed to do, but it shows you when a lot of dudes do these things, they cause their women to err, they cause their women to bring damnation upon herself, right? So, going back to, a sensible man, going back to the importance of being a man of understanding, is knowing the ways of Yahweh Bashem Shai, right? That's the check mark. If you want to give your daughter to somebody, you give her to a person like that, right? You don't just give her to anybody, and that shows you the degeneracy within the culture in 2025 today, because without that understanding, our people, they create more GMO babies because they have a GMO mindset themselves, right? And there is an absence of the father. So it really shows you that Esau is very, very, he did a good job. I'm not gonna lie. He did a very, very good job. So it shows you the importance of having fathers in the household. It's not just for the son's sake, but it's also for the sake of the daughter as well, right? So let me go to just bear with me. Just want to grab this account real quick. Okay, this is First Samuel chapter 18. Hold on, just bear with me. I'll start at verse 25, and it says, "And Saul said, Thus shall he say to David, The king desireth not a dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when the servants told David these words, it pleased David to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. When David arose and went, he and his men slew the Philistines 200 men, and David brought their foreskins and gave them in full tale to the king, but he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife. And Saul knew, and Saul saw and knew that the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. Right. So, Saul didn't give his daughter to a nobody. And this point, and what's it called, in this chapter, in this arc in David's life, David was pretty much like on the come up, because this is after the fact that he's shown himself to be a competent warrior. But not only that, he's shown himself to actually have morals and be a man after the Most High's heart. That's what makes him a very, very valuable man, and that's what makes him a man of understanding, right? So I kind of just wanted to bring that out real quick, just to show the value of being a man of understanding, right? And time again, we see these different how do you call these people, men of misunderstanding, because and I was thinking about it also, just a little side note. A woman is a good resource if the man has understanding and he knows how to use her in righteousness, of course, right? And she can be essentially tailored and programmed to actually be a help to your household. Like, for example, I'll just use myself as an example. I don't want to ramble on too much, but there's a woman I was talking to, and I was giving her the understanding of the benefits of cilantro. And cilantro has, when you look into it, this is something I learned from the Apostle Gabar. And the plant cilantro, it has a very strong smell, potent smell, but it has very powerful detoxing properties, for cleansing your body from like very, very heavy metals, right? It's because we're so exposed to different metals and chemtrails and all this shit in the atmosphere, right? So that was one of the things that I gave, and I told her, right? So they've developed this habit of actually trying to get that those get those important nutrients into their diet, right? Because as the scriptures say, the Lord created the medicines out of the earth. But that just shows you the importance, not to boast myself, I'm just using myself as an example, just to show you, brothers, the importance of being a man of understanding, right? And you see the contrast in being a man of understanding versus being a guy like Alazar, being a man of misunderstanding, right? David is an example of a man of understanding who has competence, right? And eventually he becomes king, right? He acquires resources, but he was a man after the Most High's heart. That's really the most chief cornerstone of of him being a valuable Israelite man, right? So anyways, I'll leave it there, but Lord's will, as always, this lesson was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, teaching us his truth. Until next time, I say Shalom.